I think this year has proved to be a little bit more comfortable than one could have thought on government finances. Tax revenues have been buoyant, and that's helped them tide things along, even though divestment has been a little disappointing. But all in all, the consensus seems to be that you'll be somewhere close to that 6.8%, and that's a relief.
Yes, absolutely, Ira. Look, there's clearly excellent news as far as tax collections are concerned. The formalization of the economy, the fact that the formal sector is doing this well, clearly is translating into much better tax revenues than anticipated. So that's really, really good news. In fact, I expect that the overall tax revenues at the central level could be between 2 to 2.5 lakh crores higher than budgeted. So which is excellent news. 1% of GDP is excellent news. In addition, if you recollect, RBI's paid 50,000 crores additional over and above what was budgeted. So it looks like receipts will be about 2.5 to 3 lakh crores more than what is being budgeted, which is great. On the flip side, of course, there is plenty of other bad news. You do have additional expenditures because of COVID, because of NREGA, because of food and fertilizer subsidy. You do have transfers that need to happen to the states because of the shortfall in GST, etc. And you have lots of holes. While the FCI mess has been cleaned up substantially in the last budget, you still have lots of holes at the state level. I'm very, very concerned about state level finances. And you also have holes remaining in some other sovereign-owned enterprises, including, for instance, the discoms at the state level, which are obvious. You also have things like NHAI, PFC, REC, state utilities, transport utilities, etc., where there are potential hidden expenses which are not showing up. So all in all, yes, the headline will probably end up at about 6.8% or so. That headline, reveals very little and hides a lot more. There's a lot of stories underneath that headline, both for the current year as well as for the future.
Okay, and I'll come to those contingent liabilities a little later in the conversation. But assuming we come somewhere at about 6.8, I think the question is that given the uncertainty that is persisting in the economy, given the fact that monetary policy has probably done what it had to, what is the extent of fiscal consolidation one can pursue in the next year? Half a percentage point, it seems like a reasonable amount, or would you think that given that conditions will turn unfavorable next year, they would need to budget for slightly sharper consolidation?
Well, I think they could pencil in about 0.8% consolidation, Ira. So they could go to 6%. They could even go slightly lower than that if required. Here is what I'm basing that on. There are several moving parts, Ira, as you know, and it's frankly, we are guessing out here right now. First off, I think that the tax buoyancy will continue. Okay, so what we saw this year, this trend of formalization, it's a big if because we're in the midst of Omicron as we speak. We don't know how that's going to play out. But it does look like formalization is here to stay. And to that extent, penciling in a 20% increase in revenues, I think is possible. It seems plausible to me at least. Okay. I do think they will continue with the trend of expanding capital expenditure. They after all have this national infrastructure plan, etc., which they have to fund. So I think that goes up. At the same time, they'll probably try and control your revenue expenditure as they tried to do in the last budget as well. So all in all, and plus the big positive coming through, Ira, is what we are seeing in terms of nominal GDP expansion. You're budgeted 222 lakh crores or so when you came out last year in February. Now you're penciling into 32 lakh crore of nominal GDP. Of course, it's all inflation, but nevertheless, the denominator does go up substantially. If that trend continues, so if you see a 14% expansion in nominal GDP next year as well, which is possible, I think, that could again help in terms of bringing the overall numbers down. So headline central fiscal deficit can come down to 5.86%, I think, if I go by those numbers. But the problems remain. The fact is we need a lot of money into investments. States do have a problem, and several sovereign-owned enterprises do have a problem. So there are plenty of other issues to be sorted out there.